The final checks for these French paratroopers. In a few minutes, their transport plane will leave the French base in Chad's capital, N'Djamena, destined for the deserts of Niger, 1,200 kilometers to the north. It's the first operational jump into hostile territory for this regiment in over a decade, an opportunity many soldiers never experience. For the youngest, the concentration, even apprehension, is plain to see.
Remember everyone, at the drop zone, the aircraft is headed southwest. Keep an eye on the plane, that'll help you work out your position.
Laden with 2 parachutes, weapons, equipment and rations, the soldiers carry up to 70 kilos. The 3-hour flight, a last chance for rest as well as contemplation ahead of a grueling 12-day mission. Flying at an altitude of just 300 meters, once they reach the drop zone, speed is essential to avoid missing the target. It takes barely a minute for the paratroopers to all plunge into the inky darkness. Once on the ground, the soldiers hike through the night to their rendezvous point. Their objective is to disrupt the illegal traffic of weapons from Libya around the Salvador Pass. The latest mission of Operation Barkhane has begun. At Madama, the French advance base in the desert, the ground convoy is preparing to leave. In all, over 40 vehicles and almost 200 troops headed for the northern reaches of Niger.
We have 10 days to do something out of the ordinary. Have fun. There'll be moments when it's hard, when you'll suffer, but that's the mission.
The logistical challenge is huge, transporting fuel and supplies to sustain men and machines in the desert for almost 2 weeks. That means almost 30,000 litres of water alone to survive in the arid conditions. The French troops are joined by a company of Nigerian soldiers as the 2 armies work hand in hand.
The convoy has been formed and ready. We're waiting. Our Nigerian comrades are here already. We're just waiting for daybreak in a quarter of an hour. Just a few more minutes before we get underway.
As day breaks across the desert, the column rumbles northwards. The journey will last more than 2.5 days in scorching conditions. Punctures, breakdowns and sand dunes slowing the convoy's progress. Close to the Algerian frontier, the parachute troops are Operation Barkhane's advance guard. To avoid the worst of the searing heat, today's reconnaissance mission began before dawn. The men are hunting on foot for routes through the isolated valleys used by the adversary, who the French army calls armed terrorist groups.
These coordinates are my current GPS position, from where I am taking a photo of the Algerian side of the valley, towards the northeast.
The current mission covers a zone of some 5,000 square kilometers. Captain Gueric's unit of 90 men is setting up 3 hidden surveillance posts, keeping watch night and day on the lookout for suspect activity. But his positions are strung out 15 kilometers apart.
We're moving the command post for my unit to bring us closer to one section that we can only reach with a satellite telephone. But that's not good enough, as the reaction time is slightly longer.
That delay a potential danger if the units come under attack, meaning the search continues for a new base. Back in the mountains, the men fan out, on the lookout for potential passing points between Niger and Algeria, hidden from view by the rugged terrain. The frontier is just a few kilometers away.
Instead of driving around it, which would take an hour or 2, shaking people up, damaging the equipment, well, we're going to climb up. Hopefully we'll get some viewpoints to check whether vehicles could get through.
Transporting enough equipment to dig in temporary positions, the unit treks laboriously upwards. As the men continue their ascent, the temperature rises. It'll be close to 50 degrees Celsius by midday. The effort intensified by the unforgiving terrain. On the mountains overlooking the Algerian border, the French unit sets up their observation post. Shielded from the sun's blaze, the lookouts keep watch for any movement or sign of life.
Beyond that mountain, 3 kilometers away, is the Algerian frontier. What we're interested in is keeping watch on the V towards those two pyramid-shaped hills.
Tracking armed groups in the desert and mountains is less a conventional war, more like looking for a needle in a haystack. The invisible adversary remains a constant threat.
Nothing conclusive, but you always have to make sure. If we don't find anyone, well, the mission's fulfilled.
The mission fulfilled then, at least partially, as the French operation forces the traffickers to take alternative routes. Back at the forward command post, the operation's senior officer takes stock. Colonel Tassel acknowledges he and his men face a complex task.
The object for us is to be able to observe from a distance a maximum number of locations, which allows us to be able to intervene, either by catching them in our net or by hunting them down afterwards. We're a bit like hunters. We hide and wait for someone to come our way, and then we swoop.
The next day, the French officers prepare a joint patrol with the Nigerian commander, Captain Mohammed. The French may boast technological advantages and heavier weapons, but they need Nigerian cooperation in the desert and rely on their superior local knowledge. A few kilometers after leaving, the Nigerian scouts find signs of activity.
So here we have a bit of food, some clothes, and the wrapping in bags for carrying the drugs. These were left behind by terrorist elements that stayed here, which shows that there's a lot of traffic coming through this zone.
The traffickers and insurgents rely on a network of supply dumps like this along their route, running drugs and guns between Libya and northern Mali. In such an inhospitable area, any sign of life is suspicious. Tire tracks catch the attention of the Nigerian captain.
These are four-wheel drive tracks. We think they're about a week old. About 4x4s.
Direction of travel, type of vehicle and age of the tracks. The Nigerian commander can decipher the smallest clue in the sand. His expertise in the desert proving invaluable.
The zone is very large. As soon as we find a track, we have to find it immediately to optimize our chances for an interception.
The trail leads to this secluded rocky outcrop, riddled with concealed caves, an ideal hiding spot for the armed groups.
It's like a service station here. This is clearly a refuge zone where they spend the night. You can see all the caves that provide them protection and shelter for the night. You see those two oil drums there? We see lots of tire tracks, which shows that this is a zone where they camp out.
Operating on their home territory, the Nigerians take the lead and investigate, French forces providing covering support. Once the zone is inspected, and with no recent suspect activity to report, the supply dumps are removed to ensure the traffickers cannot make use of them.
As long as we're here, reduces the flow of traffic. They're forced to go a different way to take more risks. They have to